Last week we identified that a particularly potent strain of opiates had found its way into Huntsville. Unfortunately, the way we found this out is because we had a spike in the number of overdose fatalities around town, and we're currently investigating those and trying to determine the source.
Now, at this point, I know there's still a bit of an investigation going on, but as you mentioned, several deaths related to this investigation. Unfortunately, not a new thing for Huntsville, as we've had this purple heroin investigation come through before. Can you tell me about that previous situation?
I would say it's not restricted to Huntsville. We've seen it throughout Canada, and particularly in Ontario. Unfortunately, Central Ontario has been particularly hard hit. The opiate crisis has been rising exponentially throughout North America over the last several years. And towns like Huntsville, smaller rural towns, small communities, have been particularly hard hit by them.
So tell me about the characteristics of this drug. Obviously, it's purple. Why is it called purple heroin?
Purple heroin is just another derivative of heroin. There's also purple fentanyl and fentanyl, which is a particularly concerning drug. Fentanyl itself is 100 times more powerful than heroin. I'm sorry, it's 40 times more powerful than heroin, okay, and 100 times more powerful than morphine. There's also carfentanil, which is an even more powerful form of heroin. As little as 2 milligrams of that can cause a fatality in a person. And something that's particularly concerning is sometimes these drugs we're finding are being used as cutting agents with other drugs of choice that people have. So people who are buying these drugs illicitly off the street, obviously there's no quality control. They may not know what they're getting, and they can ingest something that they might think is marijuana or cocaine that they've used in the past, and find out that it's going to have fatal consequences for them.
Why is this drug being found in these other drugs? What's the purpose of using this in something like marijuana?
Well, the people who engage in this kind of behavior are particularly reckless. Cutting agents allow them to extend the amount of drugs that they have and maximize their profits. And when I say the term reckless, it is reckless behavior. We take this extremely seriously. I'm with the Criminal Investigation Branch. What falls within our mandate in the Criminal Investigation Branch is homicides. So we are looking at these as culpable forms of criminal death. It's not just trafficking, and not to minimize the seriousness of trafficking, but in my books, if you actually go out and traffic in a substance, knowing the risks, knowing the danger to the public when you do it, and that causes a fatality, you're looking at a manslaughter charge, potentially. And I can tell you right now, there's several cases before the courts in Ontario where we have laid charges for manslaughter for people who've engaged in trafficking where people have died.